The reading this morning is from Genesis, continuing our excursion through the book of Genesis, chapter 29, verses 15 through 28. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were lovely, and Rachel was graceful and beautiful. Jacob loved Rachel. So he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." And Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, that I may go into her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all of the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went in to her. Laban also gave his maid Zilpah to the daughter Leah to be her maid. And when morning came, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this that you have done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" And Laban said, "This is not done in our country, giving the younger before the firstborn. Complete the work for this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me for another 7 years." Jacob did so and completed it, and Laban gave him his daughter Rachel as a wife. May these words be to us our light and life. Sense just meaningful don't of make without their jumble, unless sounds order random, some arranged words are coherent, unless words into are. Words don't make sense unless they're arranged into some meaningful relationship. Without a coherent order, words are just a random jumble of sounds. Years ago, I need a prop. Years ago, in a televised performance of Hamlet, a very young Christopher Plummer, in the title role, made this point brilliantly. Early in the play, he is affecting madness, but Polonius comes upon him while he is reading. Well, how do you maintain the charade of irrationality while engaged in a very rational act? Polonius asks Hamlet, "What are you reading?" And the script has Hamlet answer, "Words, words, words." But the actor Plummer underscores this point by doing it like this. Words, words, words. Words are just irrational signs if they aren't arranged in some kind of meaningful context. Okay, well, try this one. Imagine making a cake by throwing into a bowl equal handfuls of baking soda, salt, sugar, whatever is left in a jug of milk, and a bottle of oil. Without some sense of proportion, what you need more of and what you need less of, the result will be a gloppy mess. That's the way many of us are feeling these days. We are being overtaken daily by amplified, digitized, and internalized words by the billions. We're being inundated with words, words, words. What you need more of. Each shocking news story is overtaken by the next breaking news story, and it's all a big gloppy mess. even before events of last year overtook us. We were dealing with the barrage of words that comes at us from the TV, the radio, from people talking too loud at the table the next one over, to say nothing of the words that crowd into our heads. We rehearse what we're going to say, we replay what we just said, we stress about what we need to get done, tell ourselves what to do next, criticize ourselves for what we just did, or simply distract ourselves with random thoughts, and songs pop into our heads and drive us crazy. We text, we Google, we email, words, words, words. An overgrown jungle of words. More information than we can ever assimilate, all of it clamming for equal time, and the proportions are all out of whack. I can spend hours following Google threads until I forget what I was searching for in the first place. I use email, I text, I use Facebook, Dropbox, and Google Docs. My phone knows me better than I know it. I upload and edit photos, I Skype, I need programs like, web programs like Dreamweaver and WordPress, and I need office programs like Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and I also need design programs like InDesign and Adobe Photoshop, and I could keep going, but you would just glaze over. And then the wretched software engineers release upgrades. And the whole learning curve starts all over again. In this thicket of noise, words, information overload, insatiable technology, and our very real governmental crisis, where do we find a clearing? Well, words don't make sense unless they're arranged into some meaningful relationship. Without a coherent order, words are just a random jumble of sounds. And without a sense of proportion, what you need more of, what you need less of, the recipe will result in a gloppy mess. Well, where does that coherent order come from? Where do we find the sense of proportion? What is the context that makes meaning out of chaos? And how do we navigate our news feeds, stay critically informed without becoming dangerously overwhelmed? If I show you a picture of, or a series of pictures, windows, wooden boards, electrical wires, some pipes, some roof tile, all heaped together, you would see a pile of construction material. If I say house, you make sense of it. You know the relationship between the materials and what goes where. You might even form a mental picture of the finished house. In a flash of understanding, what you've basically done is tell yourself a story. You have a beginning, a pile of materials, a middle, the building process, how it comes together, and an end, the finished house. Your story probably didn't include every nail and every light socket because it didn't need to have those details in order for you to make your story coherent. If you had to run to Home Depot several times because of false starts, you may or may not include that in your story. It depends on the point you want to make to yourself or to the people you're talking to. One thing we human beings have always done is make sense of ourselves and the world we inhabit by telling stories. We create order out of chaos by putting events and experiences together and turning it into some kind of plot. Along the way, we decide what to emphasize, what details to leave in, and which details to leave out. It depends upon the point we want to make. I had an unhappy childhood, but I survived and I'm strong. I had an unhappy childhood, so I'm damaged for life and a victim. The beginning is the same, but the story progresses according to our narrative choices. We can't change the experience, but we can change how we make it part of our story. In the my life as a house metaphor, I can include Home Depot runs to myself to show how I'm a failure. Or I could include Home Depot runs to acknowledge how far I've come. Or, it really doesn't matter anymore how many runs I made, because I'm so different now today, it doesn't matter on that, and I can focus on a different part of the story. Good storytelling requires some notion of limitation. What to leave in, what to take out. How do you decide that? I think you know as well as I. By deciding what point you want to make. By deciding how you want to wrap it up for this particular person you're introducing yourself to, or where you are at this point in your life. But when you know that, you shape all of those details accordingly. Now I'm finally going to get to the text. We've spent the summer reading stories from the Bible, and not just any stories. The book of Genesis has some of the best stories in the Bible, and they are foundational stories, the ones that tell us how it all began, that locate us in the long arc of God's interaction with Israel. And Jacob's arc, which we've been exploring these past weeks, is one of the most colorful. Today's story is ostensibly about the dealings between Jacob and Laban. But so much attention is placed on the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that this story comes as a welcome reminder that these sisters, Rachel and Leah, through pregnancy or surrogacy, are the mothers of the 12 tribes of Israel. Admittedly, the way for Leah is hard. But then it is helpful to remember that although the tradition favors her sister, it is clear that God is there for Leah. She is blessed with many children. Her role in the covenant between God and Israel is undisputed. God takes what is there out of this difficult situation, and God provides a way forward, not just for Leah, but for the nation itself. This suggests a parallel to our own lives, that although attention may be focused on the major players in history or the major players in our families, but although that attention is placed there, God is not so limited. When the attention, the prominence, the spotlight is focused on one individual, whether by luck or parents or an employer or the news media, God is a steadfast presence in every life, even and maybe especially in those not in the limelight. God is always offering possibilities, opportunities, and pleasures to enrich our lives and to strengthen us for whatever contribution we can make to the well-being of this world. The God who comforted Leah is the same God that comforts us today. This God fills us with trust and hope, no matter what our circumstances. In God's story, no one is left out. The context behind today's story, the organizing principle, if you will, is the overarching presence of God and God's steadfast, intimate care for both sisters, for the one who is favored and for the one who is overlooked. God's transformative love shown in the sisters' lives, which becomes determinative for the nation, becomes the reason that the story is written down. The story gets told by a group of story people to each other, and it sustains a community that persists over millennia. These are our forefathers. These are the women who bore us. We are the people of the book, a storied people. One way or another, the books of the Old Testament describe, reflect on, or advance the story of God. initially in relation to Israel, but eventually in relation to the whole world. And this became the guide for the canon. The canon is the list of books that are officially recognized as comprising the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament. In, out. When deciding which stories to tell, the rabbis used God as the determining factor, the principle of limitation. More specifically, the canon tells us what we can learn about the nature of God. And it is this. The nature of God is love, respect, inclusiveness, equitable distribution, an alternative to empire, beauty, presence, forgiveness, over and over again, forgiveness. And when Jesus comes out of Galilee, this is what he teaches. And this becomes the organizing principle for the New Testament too. What can we learn from Jesus about the nature of God? That the nature of God is love, justice, respect, inclusiveness, equitable distribution, an alternative to empire, beauty, presence, forgiveness, over and over again, forgiveness. By God's amazing grace, we are rescued from slavery, but also from neglect. Out of the wreckage of the day, out of each new outrage perpetrated against those who are the other, God makes a way out of no way. So here's a suggestion for these tumultuous times. Let God be your organizing principle. Your principle of limitation, what to take in, what to leave out. Your guide, your context, your filter, your sense of proportion, your refuge, your locus of meaning and coherence. Genesis gives us a pile of material. Faith gives us a building process, telling us what to emphasize and what to leave out. God provides the end, a vision of the finished house, the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven. Tells us what it's supposed to look like. And when you know that, you can shape everything accordingly. God created this world, the story goes, out of chaos. God is always creating order out of chaos. And maybe even especially when the chaos is in our own lives. Words, words, words. Or the alternative. In the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God. And the Word was God. Amen.